welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Triple Coverage Podcast. My name is Lance Nelson. To my left is Scott Casson. To my right is Benjamin Shoup. And to my far right, way over there, is Tommy Parzymieso, the announcer of the Bills' first round draft pick and Bills fan extraordinaire. Tommy, how are you tonight, sir?
Good.
Appreciate you joining us here. Exciting couple of days or week, I guess, for you, right? So back off the road here from Green Bay. How you feeling?
Feeling good. It's definitely fun.
Awesome. The Bills made their first round pick at number 30 on Thursday. Did you think at all that there was a chance the Bills could pick sooner than pick 30?
I thought so. I thought there were feel like there were a lot of rumors going around that they could trade up. I mean, I'm fine that they stayed at 30 though. I feel like we're still able to get a good pick at that pick.
I do want to ask, when you went up to announce the pick, right after you announced it, you said, "Let's go." Did you have that pre-planned, like, in your head, or were you just something in the moment?
Yeah, I kind of planned the entire thing I was going to say, like hours before, probably. But then.
Yeah, that's smart. You don't want to get up there and be like, "Oh, I'll be fine. Just reading the card," and you see people mess it up all the time. But no, you nailed it. Who would you say was, other than Goodell and Maxwell Hairston, the pick, who was like the coolest guy that you met when you were there? That you were like, "Wow, I can't believe I got to meet him."
Or girl.
True. Or girl.
I mean, that's cool to see the NFL Live crew. I will say that. They're all pretty cool to see.
You got to see Mina Kimes, so example of she was probably the coolest person, in my opinion.
I like Mina.
Work, so. Good. I know that you spent a lot of time with Patrick Moran last night, and I've had some busy few days in the limelight here, so just wanted to keep that going, man. And first of all, congratulations on getting that wish made and being able to announce the Bills' first round pick. You absolutely crushed it. So that was a very cool experience. I think you had a lot of people behind you. A lot of people were very excited to see that moment for you, and must have been very cool for you to experience as well.
Yeah.
And we talked about a little bit before the show here that you didn't really get to know the pick too far in advance, right? You kind of found out just a few minutes before. You got a little advance notice, but had you known anything sooner, maybe you would have spilled the beans, is what you were saying.
Yeah, I definitely would have.
Yeah, I can only imagine it would be pretty tough to find out the pick and then have to hold it in and be like, oh, like I can't say anything. I got to be the only one.
Yeah. If that ever happens again, feel free to send that my way. I'm not going to go bet it or anything.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. But they wouldn't even let me know until maybe just before. So maybe a last minute one.
Yeah.
Last minute wage.
There he goes. Yeah. So, cool. I mean, so you got to meet Roger Goodell, and it was a cool experience. You said you were hanging out in his office, had a bunch of interactions. So just talk a little bit about how, you spent a little bit of time with the commissioner of the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I met Roger Goodell, talked to him in between of his picks when he was coming back from announcing his picks and stuff. We talked a little bit because we talked about kind of this him obviously from Jamestown, from the Western New York area. So that was cool to see that the commissioner is very close from here, where he grew up and stuff, at about an hour and a half south in Jamestown.
Yeah, and it's cool to see some of these guys that you kind of just see on TV, and they're just kind of just a guy, right? When you meet him in person, it's kind of nice to get that experience.
Yeah, pretty much. And I told him about also what I'd like to do in the future, I guess, of being a coach one day as well.
Yeah, and coaching football, right?
Yeah, give me some input on like what to do, start small, all that kind of stuff. It's definitely gonna take some time for sure, and experience.
A lot of good life lessons then that he was cluing you in on, huh? 'Cause he's
Yeah.
obviously some good success and experience in his life, so
Yeah.
that's really neat. So you got a fundraisers coming up on Saturday for Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and trying to make your life at home a little bit more independent, a little bit better. So we are going to share the link to that in the comments, guys. If you can, you're able, please feel free to donate and show up. It's going to be a pretty fun time, I hear, on Saturday. Going to have a lot of free food and drinks, so that's always exciting over at the Wings meeting
especially with
place
free.
there. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And we're lucky. So Scott lives in Baltimore. If he was in Buffalo, he would be there and probably drink all the beer on you. So
I'd try my best. I'd go down swinging.
yeah, good. All right. So Brandon Bean made a move after going on WGR this week, and kind of came out of the gates a little bit hot with the receiver talk with Jeremy White and company there. So right at, 2 days after the comments, you then had a wide receiver, Elijah Moore, signed here in Buffalo. So what did you first think? We'll start with you, Tommy. Give a couple of thoughts there on when the Bills signed Elijah Moore. Were you happy about that? And do you have any other thoughts? And have you watched Elijah play much before he got to Buffalo here?
I definitely like the move because I've been watching him since his rookie season with the Jets and stuff, and I saw then that he could be potentially good for that team. But now 2 teams later at the Bills, I feel it's a great signing because he did not really play with the superstar quarterback like Allen, right now, sort of playoff. So definitely like the move. I feel like he has a lot of potential.
Yeah, I'm wondering when it comes to Elijah Moore, how much that played a factor into other teams maybe even giving him a call of like, oh well, I haven't played like you said, Tommy, he hasn't played with a great quarterback, hasn't really had quarterbacks in his teams that have been somebody that you can look at and say, oh, this is he makes the receivers better. Allen can do that, so I wonder how much that played a factor with it. I did like the signing. I think you saw it coming a little bit, like probably a week or so ago, and then once they didn't draft a receiver till the 7th, I think most people were like, okay, this might be something that I don't know if they expected it this soon after the draft, at least something that they were maybe saying, oh, the next month or so could happen. They brought him in, ended up working out, but I think it's also good to have those guys come in that are kind of looking for potentially like their final real shot at making their mark. It's his 3rd team now. He finally gets a great quarterback. And now it's that time where he can kind of show, hey, this is what I got and see what his career can do from here. So I like it. I think he can he can beat everybody in all 3 phases. He's not, going to be a guy that is a one-trick pony, so he can do a little bit of everything. So I do like I like the signing, and I think it rounds out that top 5 of the receiving room very well because you have got a lot of guys now that can do a lot. And I keep seeing that word positionless thrown around. You see it all the time on defense. Now you're starting to see it even on offense, and people saying, well, the Bills, are they just really embracing that type of receiver and that type of just playmakers on the offensive side? So I'm excited.
That's pretty wild. Tommy and I were actually talking about positionless football sort of before you and Scott joined us backstage. So that's a pretty cool thing to hear you say that, Ben, because we kind of already discussed that a little bit off air, and I think it's 100% true.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, honestly. He played about an even number of snaps in the slot versus outside last season, can line up anywhere, which is pretty similar to pretty much everybody in that Bills offense. So can line him up all over the place. He was a stud at Ole Miss, like very highly regarded coming out of the draft, was an early 2nd-round pick. And you guys said he didn't play with a good quarterback. You forget He played with Jameis Winston last year for a couple games, and had
Jameis,
two best
Jameis.
games of his career with Jameis Winston. So don't knock my guy Jameis. Big fan of his. But yeah, I'm really excited. A word that gets thrown around a lot, especially with Bills fans, is separation and separators, and he's a guy who can separate. He's fast and he's also quick. He runs pretty good routes, and I'm excited. Like, I don't think anybody's expecting him to come in and be a 1,000-yard guy, but he's never had less than 446 yards in a season. Had a career high of 640 2 seasons ago. So even though he wasn't playing with the best quarterbacks, wasn't in great situations, he was still putting up decent numbers. So I think he's a really good fit. And yeah, like you said, Ben, when they didn't draft a receiver and it got longer and longer going on, it's like, okay, like everybody's freaking out. They didn't draft a receiver in the 3rd or 4th round, but Elijah Moore will make much more of an impact this season than any receiver in day 2 or 3 of the draft would. So excited about it.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the Bills needed to, or could have used this skill set. I think Joe Brady kind of said when they first signed Curtis Samuel, he said you can never have too many Curtis Samuels on the roster. Yeah. And although Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel are not identical players, they still have the abilities to do multiple things in an offense. And I think that versatility, and they both have some speed, which allows them to play many different roles with an offense. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what Joe Brady was talking about, that you have to kind of get as many guys that have the versatility and the skill sets to be able to have a successful offense. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that, perfect wide receiver structure that you see with some teams where they have like an outside wide receiver dedicated and all this stuff. The Bills are able to play multiple guys in multiple positions, and then that doesn't allow the defense to really key on exactly what they're going to do in any specific formation.
Yeah. And, I think this even, I know you mentioned Bean's comments a little bit. I think this even kind of alluded to what he was saying. I think some people, it was kind of back and forth on how some people took it of like, well, it's kind of hypocritical that he then goes out and signs a receiver. I think he was more saying this of like, well, we don't need to force it in the draft. We don't need to force it in certain spots, because then you can, like you said, like he just did 3 days later, go and get a guy who, to a lot of people, at least this year, I know we talked about a little bit, Lance, outside of the show, of like, well, what would you rather have, a receiver 4th round or later, or would you rather have Elijah Moore? And I think this year, I think a lot of people would probably say Elijah Moore. Now, down the road, who knows? But I think this is that aspect of, you kind of bring in a guy now that's hungry, that's looking to prove himself, and will be able to maybe do a little bit more than a guy in the fourth round or later, especially in a class that once you got to the 4th round with receivers, didn't really have a ton of great weapons out there. Not a lot of guys that were at least as well-rounded as him. We talked off camera about Dante Thornton, which, like, yeah, great speed guy, could be a great NFL player, but as a whole receiver, as a complete receiver, Elijah Moore definitely has that when it comes to him, while Thornton might have better speed and better deep threat, a deep threat kind of build there for him. So I don't think they could have gone out wrong either way, even if they did go with a guy like Thornton, but I do like that they had opted to kind of wait, not force it on receiver, and then go more elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, Tommy, you want to answer that question too? If you could have a wide receiver that was picked on the 4th round or Elijah Moore, do you have a preference on what you would pick there?
I gotta take Elijah Moore there. Because like it's a rookie that you would be drafting, and he may boom or bust, and it's a little risky. Like, Elijah Moore, I feel like has proven a little bit more. Like, and he's kind of a veteran now. He's been in the league for a while.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe a little bit more.
Can't be doing this good, man, because you're going to take my spot pretty soon, I think. So
no, I don't think so.
No, just kidding.
No.
Very good. No, that's good analysis there, though. I think that you're exactly right. Elijah Moore right now is the more known commodity, and he definitely has a lot more known upside and things. That the floor is higher, obviously, and my point was with a rookie, you have 4 years of control basically, though, where you can, develop that guy. And if in year 3 and 4, that guy's developed and producing at a high clip, you have a pretty, inexpensive, high, talented and high production wide receiver. So that's
fine
the
too. But
trade-off.
we're in the middle of Josh Allen's prime right now. Like, obviously I do, but I don't necessarily care about 3 or 4 years from now.
Sure.
As far as like a 4th or 5th round receiver, like we get a guy who can help the Bills win the Super Bowl next year, which is the guy they think Elijah Moore is. I think that's more important, and Brandon Beane clearly does too. And I think a part of his comments when he was on whatever show it was on Monday were like, guys, like, have I not shown you that I can build a roster? Like, everybody freaked out last year about the receivers, and they set all sorts of records. Like, there's a plan. It's going to work out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was two things true. I think, like, Brandon Beane did come out a little bit hot and maybe, roasted him a bit, but also, they talk a lot about it at the same time. They do talk a lot about having the wide receiver and maybe having a number one wide, or the lack of having a number one wide receiver very often. And there's sort of that shtick that, Jeremy White has, which is entertaining with the wide receiver train. But I think it just the constant, I think before Beane came on, he even said something like, oh, the wide receiver train is going to fire up again next year for the draft and stuff like that. So I think comments like that probably led to what Beane said. And, it is kudos to them, though. I think Jeremy White absolutely crushed it with handling it pretty well after being kind of berated on live radio. So still kudos to them, and made a good segment out of it. It was very entertaining.
I do just want to also touch on, the topic of, we would have him under contract for 4 years. When you look at the receivers right now, contract-wise, you just extended Shakir, so you have him locked up. Coleman's still on his rookie deal for the next 3 years, and you bring in Josh Palmer, who's could be here for 3 years, and then so you already have 3 guys that are locked up. So receiver contracts aren't necessarily going to be a huge issue for the next foreseeable future, at least hopefully. That's obviously banking on Josh Palmer being the guy that we're hoping he can be, and Coleman continuing to take those steps. I do think, to Scott's point, at this point in Allen's career, which could have been better. I mean, obviously, Thornton could light it up and could become a guy that we look back and say, man, I wish that we went and got him. But I do like, we'll get into it later, but I do like the Deone Walker pick, who is a guy that fell decently far when it came to his preseason rankings. People had him going in the top 10, top 15. To get him then in the 4th round, I think is a very good pick, especially for now. You can look at a position like defensive end, tackle and defensive end, like D-line, and not have to worry about, mid-season we're going to have to bring in Jordan Phillips or Quentin Jefferson or, anything like that. You have youth. I think it was Kevin. I think it was Kevin from that was the one that posted it about the average age of the D-line became 24
5 years younger.
Yeah, it was almost a 5-year difference, which not even just skill wise, you might get guys that are more skilled, but you just get maybe a little bit more energy too from these young guys, these guys that want to come out, prove themselves. So I do like it. I'm excited about it. I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but later on, but yeah, I think a lot of aspects play into it. And, I think some people maybe were fixated on that receiver and fixated on the receiver position that they kind of didn't realize, well, there's so many directions you can go. And I think now a lot of people are in the same boat of like, okay, I like how this turned out.
Casuals love receivers.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Casuals love flashy picks.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun.
I get it. And that's what we addressed.
It's fun. So it's fun. Yeah.
All right, you guys got any more on the Elijah Moore wide receiver discussion or anything else you want to touch on when it comes to that? Tom, you got any last words on Elijah Moore, the receiving discussion there? Are you ready to move on to Christmas?
We can move on.
So Tommy's very excited for this. We talked a little bit behind closed doors here a little bit. Would you like to have a Christmas game, Tommy? Tell everybody what you told me.
And I would. I feel it would be cool to have because the Bills have never had one before, and I feel it would just be nice to watch them that day.
Now you got an
it's
NBA,
prime time.
and so the NBA has ruled Christmas Day historically. Do you think the NFL is good on Christmas?
It can be. It depends. I mean, last year they were both blowouts, both of the games. Hopefully, it's not like that this season.
Unless the Bills are blowing a team out. I mean, I don't mind a good
Sure.
win.
I mean, that's fine. But just even as a casual fan, like as a fan, just watching the Chiefs blow out the Steelers or the Texans only score 2 points. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully there's more.
I completely forgot that they only
So
scored.
the schedule rumor is that the Bills could play their last home game at Highmark Stadium,
Ooh.
the current
Last regular
Highmark Stadium.
season home game.
Yeah, last regular season home game at the current stadium on Christmas Day in prime time. So that's one of the things Tommy and I talked about was if they do play on Christmas, we would love it to be prime time. I have a 5-year-old son, so I would very much appreciate the morning and most of the day with the fam, and then be able to go to the stadium for sort of a truncated Monster Energy tailgate over at the Big Tree Inn and be able to then go to the game. But what do you guys think? The rumor is the Bills could play the final regular season home game at Highmark on Christmas Day in prime time.
Yeah, I talked about it with a cousin of mine who also has 2 young kids, and he was saying, well, if it's prime time, I'll be happy because, like you said, Lance, it's a little bit easier then to be able to go to the game and then figure out the before the game and everything. But I mean, like Tommy said, it's if they do it once, I think it will be good. If it was like an every year thing, I think I wouldn't necessarily love it. But just doing it once, I think would be an awesome experience, especially with the last year in the stadium. It'd be just the atmosphere, I think, would be phenomenal and be off the charts. So I would be a big fan of it, to see how it is and then see it then years after if maybe we would want to do it again. But I would be excited to do it at least once and kind of see how it feels and how the energy is around the stadium, how everybody's kind of energy is. I feel like it'd be a little bit more amped up, kind of like how sometimes Halloween games can be a little bit more amped up as well, because people are just excited about dressing up, and you'll see the Santa costumes on Christmas and then everybody kind of going nuts there. So I think it would be fun, and I think as long as they win too, because I don't think I'd want to see a loss on Christmas Day. I think that would kind of ruin my Christmas there a little bit.
I don't know if I like it or not. Christmas to me was always an NBA holiday. The NFL is trying to take it over because they're trying to take over everything and successfully doing so. What they say, there's going to be 3 games on Christmas this year. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, 3. It's on a Thursday, I think, also, right? I should have done more research. I like to be surprised.
Thursday.
So it's a little bit more natural than last year when it was on a Wednesday. You don't have to do as many weird schedule, jumping through hoops. I think it would be fun. I imagine they would still get a pretty good crowd. I personally hope they don't play on Christmas, to be honest. I'd rather spend that day with my real family instead of my adopted Bills family. You can't, drink 30 blue lights on Jesus's birthday in a parking lot and really feel good about it. So I think I'd be okay if they didn't play on Christmas.
Well, we wouldn't have to say happy birthday, Jesus. Sorry, your party's so lame, because Bills Mafia knows how to party. So at least
that's what I was going for.
We know the party would be good there. But yeah, any other thoughts on Christmas that you have, Tommy, there? You think prime time would be the best slot for the Bills to play in?
Yeah, but I would not like any other time. Like, if it's not prime time, I'd rather have them not play, honestly, on Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's the only good time.
Yeah, I think we all share in that endeavor. So, all right, well, let's get to the pick that you announced, Maxwell Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky. What did you think about that pick, Tommy? Did you think, I think you mentioned before we went live here that maybe a guy like Trey Amos was going to be the pick, but you did think that the cornerback position was the way to go in round 1. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely the biggest need that was exposed in the playoffs, I feel like. It was, in the Chiefs game especially, when we faced against Worthy and Hollywood Brown, I feel like our corners kind of got beat on almost every play. And they scored a lot of touchdowns by being faster than our corners were. Hairston is known for his speed, so I'll take it. I like that there's speed there to be able to keep up with those fast receivers so that they don't take over the game as much. and he can easily take an interception all the way to the end zone. I feel like too, because he can beat his receiver to the ball. I feel like, and he has good ball tracking ability. I feel like as well. So I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, everyone loves touchdowns, so being able to get that pick six is a big ability to have for a guy like Hairston. And I'm gonna toot my own horn a little bit. When we talked about the corners, I think that I was suggesting that, hey, Hairston would be one of the better fits, if not the best fit at corner for the Bills out of the options that we discussed a few weeks back there on that cornerback episode. So score one for me. I don't get that many wins. Scott usually takes them all from us, but I think I was able to get one there, at least to know that Maxwell was a good fit for Buffalo. And look, he's a very comparable in stature to Trey White. So I think that bringing in Trey White and then having a guy drafted that fits his mold is pretty cool. I think it's going to be a really cool deal for Maxwell to kind of have Trey White. John's got me in the comments here to make sure to get the names correct. So Max Hairston, being able to learn from Trey White is going to be pretty special, I think, here in Buffalo.
Yeah, anytime you can get the fastest guy in the draft, it's not a bad thing. He's really good recovery speed, which obviously at a 4.29, he's going to have that. But some guys, like, they run really fast and they're great running in their underwear at the combine, but like you watch them on tape and like you don't necessarily see it. But with him, you do. Like some plays, it almost looks like he's the only one going at regular speed and everyone else is in slow motion. He's really fast. Like you mentioned, similar size to Trey White. I think he's like 6'1", 180. It's listed a little heavier, but I'm sure he doesn't play that heavy. Put on a few pounds in an NFL lifting program, an NFL eating program. If he can keep his speed, should be great. Fits the scheme really well, like you mentioned, Lance. He is kind of an off-ball corner, is very comfortable sitting in zone, kind of play 7 to 10 yards off, and then he has the speed to react quick. If the guy runs a shorter route, he has the speed to get up there. So his instincts seem to be good. Definitely has a chance to start as early as week 1 this season, I would think. You would imagine his biggest competition would be Trey White or maybe one of the other 19 corners we took in this draft, but none of them were taken as high as him. So I like it. Once I kind of dug into his film a little bit more, I did think it would be Amos or Johnson. I guess Johnson's knee is a lot worse than they thought, or a lot worse than they let on. He dropped all the way into the 40s, and Amos I think he went in the 40s as well. But I like it. Missed a few games this year with a shoulder injury. Some people had him even higher in the draft before that happened, like maybe even top 15. So he's an athlete. He's a freak, and kind of similar to Landon Jackson, we'll talk about later, tested super well. And anytime you can get the best athletes on your football team, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit shocked, like Scott said, I think that they went him over maybe even Amos or even Morrison as well, just a guy that I thought might go higher than Hairston. But yeah, I mean, he's an exciting player. He'll bring even just energy in general as well. I don't know if anybody watched his first 24 hours video in Buffalo, which some of my favorite videos to watch that the Bills come out with is the first 24 hours in Buffalo there. And man, he just that's the one thing that kind of like popped out to me was he just energy, man. He's just constant energy, constantly up, never really gets down. So even if he gives up a play, he'll still be there. He'll still bring that energy, still be ready to go. And wants to lead the team away the entire time that he was in the facility. He was like, all right, like I'll show you where to go, like trying to guess where everything is and not have people tell him where everything is. So definitely energy guy, definitely a guy that will be able to just bring some fun back to especially some of these guys. You know, you want to have guys that take the game serious, but also guys that will come in and just be able to have fun on the field. And I think, you know, when you have a guy having fun on the field, you know, Buffalo loves those types of guys. Like Jordan Phillips came in and just had fun. And even if he does struggle a little bit to start, which I think is expected for a corner here and there to come in right away and maybe struggle in certain areas, I think that he loves the game and he you know, wants to continue to improve and see where it goes. And you know, you can't teach the speed there, you can't teach that, so you can teach everything else.
You're gonna have to do stuff with him and Keon and Trey White, like just for like social media content, because the three of those guys are gonna be electric.
They should do like a between two stalls, except it's between three stalls, like how the Sabres did with Jeff Skinner. They should do it with those three and just have those three weekly interview.
Let's
Maybe
not
throwing
take
Keon
ideas from
Coleman, too.
Sabres, but
Yeah, Keon's definitely
Yeah.
a guy.
yeah.
Yeah. So after round one, what kind of Tommy? What did you have going on? So once you announced the pick, then what did you have going on there in Green Bay? Did you get to stick around? Did you watch rounds 2 and 3 on Friday too much, or what did you have going on for round 2?
I mean, it was definitely a late wake up that day for sure because of how late like the draft was the night before. So I missed like probably almost all the second round, but I watched like all the third there. So it was
Nice.
very cold there. Like it was
You guys
definitely
you stayed in Green Bay on Friday?
yeah. Up
Nice.
until like the draft ended, we were there.
Oh, all 3 days. Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
It was
cool.
nice to watch the draft for the first time in person. On top
Yeah,
of
I
it,
talk about the energy there because you can watch it on TV, and like I said, you kind of and Pat Moran did a great job with you last night too, and taking us through some of the things with the energy in the different places when you came on and you gave us the let's go and kind of that energy. How much did the crowd and just the energy of being there live really help kind of get you going?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of energy with like fans from not just the Bills, like other teams too. It was nice to see that from other fan bases as well.
Was there any one fan base that you were maybe surprised to see so many folks there? I mean, obviously Green Bay was going to have a really good representation there, but
Yeah.
was there another fan base that was kind of out in force there?
I'm not really sure. There's a lot of different uniforms, jerseys that fans wore and stuff there. But, like I feel like all the other teams are kind of very tightly combined. I feel like there are a few Bills fans there. There are a good amount.
Yeah.
Right on. So in the second round, the Bills traded up, and I think certainly surprised me. I thought during the trade up they were going to go somewhere else, but they end up taking a guy, TJ Sanders, out of South Carolina. So, I guess were you surprised that, Sanders, look, I mean, Tyleik Williams went, Kenneth Grant obviously went before the Bills had a chance to pick. And I bet those were the two top defensive tackles. And maybe Bean was like, I'm not going to sit here and watch another guy get picked before I have the chance. So he went up and got his guy. Wanted to make sure one of his guys were brought into Buffalo. So what did you think of the TJ Sanders pick over a guy, like Collins from Texas, who maybe, was the more big guy fit, the more one tech type of defensive tackle fit that, certainly fans were clamoring for. But I guess, guys, what are your thoughts on Sanders over guys like Collins, Turner, Norman Lott, and Alexander? Ben, if you want to start this one off.
Yeah, I was shocked that they did go Sanders over Collins, but I like that they did because I wasn't a big Alfred Collins fan in general. I think that yes, he has some potential at his size, but just when you watched his tape, it just kind of when I watched him, he just kind of seemed very rigid and didn't seem like a guy that can really develop that part of his game into becoming an elite defensive tackle here, where I think TJ Sanders has the athletic ability to become elite and become a guy that can step his game up and really improve. So I like it overall. I definitely was shocked they did go D tackle here when it came to just trading that far up for one. I thought if they were going to trade up, it was going to maybe even be for a receiver. But I like it. I definitely was hoping that a guy like Tyleik Williams would fall. Obviously didn't even fall to the Bills at 30, just because he was one of those guys where I was kind of clamoring about him for months leading up to the draft and ends up going even before the Bills could pick in the first round. So, yeah, I think once he did kind of see D tackles going and kind of saw who was left, he said, hey, I got to go get my guy and go get a guy that we really are high on. And I think Sanders can come in and do a little bit of everything for you and take some ease off of the other D tackles in that rotation.
Yeah, I like the pick. I don't know if he was a guy that was on a ton of Bills draft analysts' radar going into it. I know Collins was on a lot of them, but this guy's a much better athlete than Alfred Collins, which is something that the Bills really like. I mean, obviously, but he has a really high raw athletic score, which every pick that the Bills had this year has, and most of them do. But on the Bills' offensive line, like, they'll move some guys around sometimes. So having like the most athletic people really helps, because it makes them a little bit more interchangeable there in the middle. And Oliver usually that 3 technique with moving some people around, plays a little high sometimes, which against NFL linemen you can kind of get thrown out of the club if your leverage isn't great. But that's something he can work on. He isn't the biggest one technique. I know John said he's up to 310, but I think he measured in the 290s at the combine in his pro day. So put on a little bit of weight, but he eats blocks pretty well for his size. So again, somebody who I think has a real shot to come in and compete to start, depending on what happens with DaQuan Jones. If he is on the team come that time, I think then he'd have the inside track. But if he's somebody that they really liked, and they think he can come in and have an immediate impact.
Yeah, the first 5 rounds of players I think that they took were all 8+ RAS scores. So Max Hairston was 9.63, TJ's a 9.38, and then we got them. We'll kind of go through them as we get through the other guys too. Were you surprised, Tommy? Did you have any thoughts on when TJ Sanders was picked? Were you like, who's that guy? Or were you kind of like, all right, like, when you found out that they traded up and then took TJ Sanders, what kind of went through your mind there?
I was kind of a little bit of both. Because I didn't really watch South Carolina play a lot of football, really. Or I didn't really hear about his name too much. But
right,
what I've heard and stuff, I feel like it's a good pick for us. Like, that's probably our next biggest need was a defensive tackle, I feel like, other than corner. Maybe safety, but I feel like there weren't really – I don't know what safety was really available at that time that we made the pick. Because a lot of the good ones that people looked at were already gone by the time we picked, even with the trade up.
That's right. So you guys may not know, Tommy definitely was big fan of Malachi Starks, who obviously didn't get a chance to get to the Bills, but big Malachi Starks fan who now goes to Baltimore, so going to be a guy you have to match up with.
He was obviously going to go
in big games. Yeah. So
very Baltimore pick.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, South Carolina, the strength of their team last season was their D-line. Their D-line was incredible, gave SEC lines a fits. So he was a part of that unit, which was one of the best in the SEC. So maybe one of the best in the country. So I think he should come in and contribute right away.
Okay.
Right on. Yeah. Anything else on Sanders? I don't think we had too much else to go over. Round 3 then. So round 3, we get the pick from we kind of knew, right, that you didn't think that Brandon Beane was going to go a draft without picking in the 3rd round. It's kind of just something that seems to happen every year. And we go and we take Landon Jackson from Arkansas, the edge rusher there. And there was no surprise when you saw what the board was for the Bills at 72 there. I think that it was pretty clear that Landon Jackson was the selection. So, Tommy, what do you think about Landon Jackson, and how do you think he'll fit in there with the defensive end group that they have? They got some guys, a young guy in Solomon and then Epinesa there. And do you think that maybe Landon Jackson can earn some playing time over those guys?
I think he could, because he definitely has the athleticism, and he can do a lot of stuff because he's very versatile. I feel like he's able to put pressure on the offensive line and quarterback. Like
9.78 RAS score. And looks like he had some good reps against Will Campbell there. I don't know if you've seen the highlights.
Oh yeah,
he definitely had
some film on that. It was given. I think also Taylor Booker too. He gave some tough time with as well from Alabama as well. Like top O-line prospects, he seems to not have too much of a tough time getting at least some kind of pressure. But I do like the pick. It's a very solid one.
Yeah, I thought that Jackson could have been in play at 41. Like I genuinely thought that maybe they were trading up to get an edge rusher and then going to get a guy like Landon Jackson. So for him to fall to 72, I mean that was just this overall, just based on position and where you got him in a draft and just the type of player, I think he might be the most exciting pick that they have out of these first three. You might not see him as much early on as you see Hairston or maybe you even see Sanders, but I just think you add him to this rotation here in case a guy like Bosa goes down, who obviously we know has had a history with injuries. Even if Solomon doesn't necessarily take that next step, you're looking for another guy to come in here, and at 6'6", another bigger guy can play the run. Can see if you can develop his pass rush here, and he's already got some pretty good pass rush skills, but can you develop that even more to become an elite edge rusher? We'll see, but I mean, I'm excited to see Landon Jackson this year, and I think that he could be a guy that you see, especially even maybe on early downs a lot to start the season, just in that run game, and he'll put even pressure on other guys. He'll put pressure even on Bosa. He'll put pressure on Epinesa. He'll just force snap counts. So Solomon. So this is like I said, even with D tackles, it's just you bring in younger guys that are going to be able to bring energy in, push other guys, and kind of just put that pressure on these guys to go out and perform and earn their reps and earn their snaps. So I do think that that's one of the reasons why I also love this pick, is just now you get guys that are going to be fresher out there, that guys that are going to be a little bit more ready to go in that rotation, that you're not just having guys that are 34 years old coming off and playing 5 snaps a game who might not be as fresh as a Landon Jackson now, who's coming in and being able to really give that energy boost to the defensive line.
We've had the old bulls. Now we want the young calves.
Yep.
Yeah, I like Landon Jackson. I mentioned him a couple months ago after the combine as someone who tested like crazy. I think he set the record for vertical for an edge or like his weight or something like that, over 40 inches, which is insane from a standing vert. He's definitely a bit of a project from like a pass rushing standpoint. He's not super bendy, also plays a little bit high, but he's a really good run defender. And 6.5 sacks each of the last 2 seasons, which in the SEC is solid. And like we said, he gave some first-round tackles all they could handle. So I don't think he's going to come in and make a huge impact initially, but he'll definitely be in the rotation. And as he develops a little bit more, get him with Greg Rousseau, get him with an NFL line coach, and get him with Joey Bosa this season and let him kind of learn some more pass rushing moves. He's already really good against the run. He's someone that, like we talked about earlier, 2, 3, 4 years down the line could probably be a starter for this team. But definitely be a rotation guy this year, but hopefully grows into that.
Yeah, Tommy, how do you think that Joey Bosa plays a role here, kind of with teaching a young defensive end like Landon Jackson?
I feel like he plays a good role. I feel like he's a little bit more fresher than Von Miller. I feel like he's not nearly as experienced, but I feel he's a little more fresher than when we had Von Miller. I think he's a better veteran, like in that regard. Yeah. That he'll train these guys, even like not just Jackson, but also Solomon as well. I feel like he loves to get the quarterback, and he's going to probably teach the other guys how to do it just as well as he does.
Yeah, Von Miller really relied on that bend and sort of thing. So for him to teach guys who don't have that asset to their game might be a little bit more tough. So a guy like Joey Bosa, who doesn't rely on that as much, is able to maybe help a guy like Landon Jackson a little bit more, I think, and feel like using the tools that they have that are similar to get their success in the pass rush. So I think that's a pretty cool thing for Landon Jackson to have as Joey Bosa sitting there to help bounce things off of. Obviously, Greg Rousseau now kind of a veteran presence as well. So 2 good guys that come
similar
in.
Similar play style too. So.
Right, exactly. The body is comparable in the size again. So very nice that the Bills have 2 guys that are kind of in the same mold, and they can kind of have a lot of the same tools in their repertoire to teach one another. So going to the next one, Deone Walker. Again, I think the Bills they traded up again in the 4th round here, and then took another D tackle. So basically, the Bears had this pick as part of the initial trade in the 2nd round, and then the Bills basically gave up 2 picks to get this from the Bears. So it ended up being 3 or 4 pick swap there instead of the initial trade of 2. So what when they traded up, did you think Deone Walker was the pick? And what do you think about trading up for a guy like Deone Walker?
I like it. To be honest, when they traded up for this pick, I was at a wedding Friday night, so I was still asleep, and I was in Central Time Zone, so it wasn't like it was crazy late. Time change, it'll get you. But when I woke up and saw it, I was excited. He was somebody that was, like Ben mentioned earlier, supposed to be drafted a lot higher than he was. He was a freshman All-American his first year at Kentucky. Reunite him with Max and Ray Davis. Kentucky's known for their football, so get as many of those guys as we can. But this is the massive anchor of the D line that people have been wanting the Bills to get. He's 6'7", I think in the 330s, listed at 337. So he's huge. At times, he can kind of rely on that a bit more than his technique, which is something that he's definitely going to have to fix getting into the NFL, because he's not going to be bigger and stronger than the linemen anymore. They're all going to be just about the same size as him and have better technique and just as strong. So he's going to have to become a bit more of a technician, which is something that you get him with an NFL line coach, like we just mentioned. He should be able to do, but he's huge. If nothing else, he'll eat blocks. And as we know, Ed Oliver plays his best when he has a big one technique next to him to take on blockers. So I'm excited about it. I think he'll fit in, definitely be a rotation guy. And again, in a couple years, as he learns a bit better technique, doesn't play. I don't want to call it lazy, because it's not lazy, but doesn't just rely on his size, a guy who can maybe, develop into a starter.
Yeah. What do you think that means for Ed Oliver there, Tommy? You like that they get a big guy next to him and kind of maybe take a little bit of pressure off of some of the other defensive linemen? What do you think about Deone Walker?
Yeah, I like the pick, because I feel like it'll be a lot better to have other guys be able to rely on each other, not just themselves. I feel like when you have a guy that can, I guess, help fix what you're not as good at, I feel like it's good to have someone like that.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, what did you think about Deone Walker?
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy I talked about, I think, about a show or two before the draft, just when we were talking about D tackles, about how just the size, about how his size is that type of size that you look for on D tackles. But he's not your typical 6'7", 337 D tackle. Like, he can move pretty well too at his size, and he already can kind of do a little bit of everything. Like Scott said, he's got to work on some technique stuff there and being able to especially stay low. But I like it, man. And I know a lot of people weren't too happy that we double dipped this early on D tackle, but I think after Walker, that's when it really kind of started to get real bleak at defensive tackle. So you go get your guy that's 6'7", you go get a guy that can really just, whether it's overpower or even just, you can line him up as well other places. You don't just have to put him right at nose tackle or right in the middle of the line there. You can move him around a little bit. So I'm excited to see what they do with Walker. I know that he had that back injury this past year, and I saw that he is healthy now. But I'm curious to see how fast they implement him into this rotation, to see if they kind of say, oh, we really, want to throw you in there and get you to eat some blocks here early on. But yeah, I mean, this was another SEC guy that being brought in. First 4 picks were all SEC guys, so there's a little bit of a trend there. So yeah, another Kentucky guy, and already, I guess, knows one of his teammates, or 2 of his teammates. So
yeah, didn't have a great RAS score, but maybe he'll be play more athletic than he tests, and that's a fair point. I think he's definitely showing on film that he does have a little bit of ability to move at times, and it's about having that drive and not relying on just being bigger than everybody, like Scott mentioned too. So definitely agree with all points made on him. And then the next pick here was round 5, defensive back at Ohio State, Jordan Herbie Hancock. We'll see if that name sticks or not, but I'm going to call him Herbie Hancock as long as I can. So what do you make of the Bills' 5th round selections? You had Jordan Hancock at 170, and then 173 they turn around and take a tight end overall, how do you feel, Tommy, about those picks there? Jordan Hancock can kind of do a little bit of everything, maybe a nickel, maybe a safety, see where he ends up, but maybe training with Trey White or Teron Johnson, excuse me, is going to be pretty good for him. And overall, just any thoughts you might have on both the fifth round picks, Jordan Hancock and Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, the tight end.
I feel like both picks. This pick of Jordan Hancock, I feel like adds a little more depth to the corner position, because I feel like he was able to play a lot of football at Ohio State at a high level, playing at some top college teams, and he has a little championship pedigree as well, from being from Ohio State and them just winning it just now, this previous season.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely like the pick, and he was able to tackle, intercept, whatever you name it. He was able to do at Ohio State. And then Jackson Hawes, it's another good depth pick as well. I feel like we
Kind of fits a need, right? Because we kind of need that third. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because he can block, and he's very physical as well. He doesn't have to be like the catching one all the time. He can be the other, like, kind of like pretty close to like an extra lineman that can also come out and take a route and catch a pass.
Yeah. The Hancock pick I was a little shocked as well about, but then he wasn't a guy that I looked too heavily in. But I mean, I know you saw that John was saying that the Bills that he's gonna play safety. I believe they kind of said safety / nickel. They're gonna kind of train him in both there a little bit. Probably not gonna be in that outside corner number 2 slot kind of competition there that might be there. But I'm excited for him, yeah, just because you mentioned Teron Johnson there, Lance, and Teron Johnson's not getting any younger, and now he's not necessarily old. He's not 35, 36, but he's getting older, and he's had injury history in the past, so who knows how much longer he's going to be able to keep that elite level of play. So I think if you can get a guy like Hancock who, like Tommy said, can kind of do a little bit of everything, that can tackle, that can cover, can just kind of play all over the field, and he could potentially be that replacement down the road for Teron Johnson once Teron kind of maybe even takes a little bit of a step back or anything like that. So I'm really excited about Hancock. Hawes, my first reaction was why? Like, I knew we needed a tight end 3, but I thought 5th round, it's a little bit, earlier than I maybe would have thought for tight end. But then as I kind of saw more people talking about him, dove into him a little bit more, man, I do like the pick. And he had that quote, I believe, just about how he wants to just put his head right through somebody and just really get in there and get physical. And I think for a number 3 tight end, that is what you're going to want. And especially I saw a lot of people saying he's the best blocking tight end in the draft. He'll really just be able to be that guy that can set the edge, whatever it is you need him to do when it comes to blocking. So with how much the Bills like to run 2 tight end sets, sometimes even bring out, 3. I know a lot of times the third tight end is just an offensive lineman there, but either way, you can get a guy who can come in, run some guys over, bring that physicality, and really just, do what we've seen a little bit with the Bills offensive line of just, hey, we're going to run you over, man. Like, we're going to come downhill and we're going to make you feel it. And I think it was actually Tyler Booker, the Cowboys' new guard, that was talking about how he just wants to make people not want to play the game again because of how physical he can be. That seems like Hawes is that similar of a player. Like, he wants to be so physical that he's going to run you over and make your love of the game of football disappear that game and make you want to get out of there and not have to play. So I like both of them. We'll see how both of them line up, but I think, yeah, both of them make sense once you kind of got more information on both of them.
Yeah, I'm okay with both picks. Jordan Hancock, he can play all over the field, like you mentioned, on the defensive side, which is good. Kind of like a Cam Lewis, I'm imagining. Can play outside corner, can play slot, can play safety. Having versatile guys as your depth guys is great. It makes you a lot more valuable. He's definitely going to play special teams. And like you mentioned, Tommy, Ohio State, the guy's a winner. You say get him in like an NFL program, but Ohio State basically is an NFL program, so it's not going to be that much of a shock for him.
Yeah.
I really like the Jackson Hawes pick. I like it a lot. He went to Yale for his first 5 years, graduated from Yale, which is impressive. So we know that he's smart. And you want those physical, violent football players. Like, I know he's a tight end, but he reminds me a lot of Alec Anderson, like someone that the Jets were complaining that he was like blocking too hard, and the refs were like told him to chill out. And it's like you think of like The Blind Side. It's like, what are we going to call him for? Excessive blocking. Like that's what you want. And none of the 3 tight ends last year are really that interested in blocking like that. Dawson Knox can do it. Dalton Kincaid does not want to do it. Quentin Morris, I think, did it because that was the way he was on the field. But having a tight end who can come in, so maybe this year we don't have to go as much. If we can go heavy set with Jackson Hayes instead of Alec Anderson, maybe we do some of that. Then and always throw him the ball. Like he doesn't have terrible ball skills. So I'm excited about it. And yeah, I love this quote basically about making someone else want to quit because I also played line. I get that completely.
I do also think that he can be a guy that you get the ball in his hands, maybe underneath, and he'll, he's not going to beat you with speed, but he likes to run people over. You might see somebody get run over this year by Hawes in one of his few catches that he'll probably have this year.
Yeah, Tommy, you like some truck sticks in Madden? You play Madden much there?
Oh yeah, I like to play physical whenever I'm on Madden. I try it, whether it's juking or trucking. I like that stuff.
Ground and pound.
Truck sticks are fun for sure.
Yeah.
Right on. I don't know that I said too much about the 5th round guys, but I definitely love the Herbie Hancock reference for the draft pick there with Jordan. And like Tommy mentioned, he hit the nail on the head. Ohio State pedigree, championship pedigree. I think that's a very solid point to make because that's what we're trying to build here is a championship. So like that. And then Hawes, just a big dude that can definitely fill that T3 role. It's a perfect pick. I mean, it is a little curious to me. I think that Chris Paul Jr. goes right before the Bills pick, and that could have been someone they were targeting, and they had to pivot to a guy like Hawes, which isn't a bad pivot. But I think, since Oronde Gadsden II from Syracuse went earlier in that round, that Hawes was the next best option. So definitely. I think Hawes definitely fits the mold of what the Bills need in that role, and certainly in that tight end room for sure. Bring that tenacity, things like that. We go to the 6th round, and the Bills take a couple more guys. Really surprising, kind of, because they got a third cornerback here in Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech, and then an offensive tackle, Chase Lunt from UConn, which a lot of people thought was a pretty good pick, but Tommy, were you shocked that they picked a third cornerback and then went offensive line as well? Did you think they were going to draft an offensive lineman this year?
I kind of was surprised by both of those picks, honestly, as we already had 2 cornerbacks. But I guess they have to ruin that depth to the corner position just in case anything bad happens to higher starters, I guess, because they want to make sure that the corner position is as secure as possible when whoever they play. And
then what about an offensive lineman? What did you think about taking an offensive lineman?
Adds a little bit more depth as well there because the field goal line is already really, really good as of now. And keeping an eye on them as well. It's more insurance, I guess, too, of someone like Dawkins or Torrance goes down.
Yeah, not a bad thing to have in the pipeline, right? So, and I think Chase Lunt was a pretty good pick, and I think Scott knew more about him at the time he was picked, and I had since look it up. But Scott, you mentioned some things while we were chatting as he was picked. So just mention some things about Chase Lunt out of UConn, and then also your thought on a third corner with Dorian Strong after that.
Yeah, so both these guys have played a lot of football. One was a 4-year starter at UConn, played over 3,000 snaps, all at right. I think he played all but 4 snaps at right tackle. I think he played 4 at left because who knows what happened. But, yeah, he maybe projects more of a guard at the NFL level than tackle. He's not super fast, and he has short arms. People were joking about, the tackle that the Patriots drafted having short arms too, which some of those memes are pretty funny. But yeah, he's a solid right tackle at UConn. Maybe not necessarily playing the best competition. UConn power football school. That's what you think of when you think of UConn athletics. But he's a guy who could play tackle. Could also move him into guard. He might not make the team. He probably doesn't have an inside shot at making the team. But a guy who could be on the practice squad that could play multiple positions on the offensive line. And having those guys as your depth guys, like I said earlier, is huge. And then as far as Dorian Strong, had a better season in 2023 than 2024, a lot of people thought. And I think he came back for this season thinking he could move his draft stock up, ended up moving it back. So probably a high ceiling pick, if that exists in the 6th round. Has some things to fix out. And again, maybe he makes the team, maybe not. But he's a good athlete, and we'll see if he makes it. If not, definitely a practice squad candidate.
Yeah, when we talked about corner a few weeks ago, just because he was he was a visit guy and a guy that the Bills kind of did look at, I thought of Dorian Strong maybe just because late again they were looking at him. But once you saw Hancock go, you thought, oh, it's probably off the board. But when I did see it pop up on the screen that it was Dorian Strong, I was actually very pleasantly pleased with it. I know a lot of people, like I see in the comments, surprised by a third corner. I was definitely surprised that it was a corner, but I wasn't surprised by the player. I was not surprised at all that they went with Dorian Strong, just because if you get a guy that you like and you get a guy like Jordan Hancock, who isn't necessarily an outside corner, to bring in a third guy that can play outside, that can be a little bit physical. He's a little bit different than Hairston and Hancock in those ways. So they drafted 3 cornerbacks, but they're not necessarily similar. All 3 of them kind of all are a little bit different in their own way. So I do like it, and I think Tommy touched on it earlier. You saw last year against the Chiefs in the playoffs. That was the number one thing, was cornerback depth really hurt us, and that seemed to be a major point for Brandon Beane this year. Of, we're not going to let cornerback depth be a problem this year. We're going to make sure that we are set there. So I like the Strong pick. I'm interested to see if he's a guy that they do look at. We talked about a little bit before the show. Is he a guy that they potentially look at for punt returns? I believe he was about 50 or 60 punt returns in his career. Only about 2 kick returns, so maybe not a kick return guy, but who knows? Maybe he's a guy that they look at and say, hey, can we also use him as a punt returner in that area? So I'm excited about him. And then Lunt, I was definitely shocked O-line, but yeah, again, as I kind of read a little bit more about him, it made more sense because, your O-line is not going to get any younger there, and it's always good to have guys that can come in, learn the system, and potentially, like Scott said, play tackle and guard and kind of be a guy that can fill in where you need him if a guy goes down. You're muted, Lance.
Has to happen at least once a show here for me. But Tommy, I wanted to get your opinion. Do you think that Trey White or Deone Jackson are impacted, or their roster spots? Probably more likely that Deone Jackson may be impacted than Trey White, but you don't know. You think either of those guys are impacted by the influx of draft picks here at cornerback? Do you think that a guy like Dorian Strong can push to make the 53-man roster, and maybe Deone Jackson has to be on the practice squad or gets released outright?
It definitely puts a little bit more pressure on them to be able to just make sure that they're playing at their best ability, because there's a young guy who could be replacing you, kind of. Though I know we just signed both of them, but still, I feel like
their contracts aren't overly complicated, and they're easy to move on from if they don't make the roster. So I think it's definitely going to be a motivation for them. They're going to have to outwork the younger guys, and the younger guys are going to be motivated. So kind of get that iron sharpens iron type of mentality there.
Yeah, which is helpful.
All right. Anything more on the 6th rounders, guys? I think we kind of went through most of that. So they finally get to receiver here in the 7th round. Caden Prather out of Maryland, wide receiver. Scott lives in Maryland, so he's our resident Maryland expert. So we're going to go to him first on Caden Prather. I mean, what's the scouting report, Scott? You probably are best friends with this guy. I mean, you got to be close.
I do. I have played flag with him before, actually. Yeah. No. But he is one of your favorites, Ben. He's from Maryland, and he went to Maryland, so he didn't even have to learn a new state.
Does not get better than that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's shocked. But no, he's a big body, fast receiver. Had kind of a disappointing season this year. He was honorable mention of the Big Ten last season. And a lot of people here thought he was going to take over, be the clear number one, and like have a pretty big season. He didn't really do that. I think he finished finished with 624 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's fast. It runs in the 4.5s, or excuse me, in the 4.4s. Can go up and get it. Can make contested catches. He just doesn't really run the best routes. He looks a little bit tight. Like he doesn't play super fluid. So I don't think he's going to make the 53. I do think he'll be on the practice squad. Who knows? Maybe he comes into camp, absolutely kills it. I don't necessarily see that. Also had some drop issues at Maryland. Josh Allen throws a little bit harder than Tua's little brother does. So, yeah, I think he's a practice squad guy, and maybe they develop it. And I'm sure there'll be people on Twitter saying that this guy is the second coming of Jerry Rice, like they did with Shorter. And the guy that went to Oregon State and then went to the Giants and
Hodgins.
Isaiah Hodgins, yeah, like they said about those guys. But yeah, I don't expect a ton from him, but who knows? He's big and he's fast, and that's a good thing, I'm told.
Well, I do want to just touch on. So he had some drop issues his first 3 years. His last year, though, only according to PFF at least, had 1.8% drop. He only had 1 drop, I guess, this past year. So
was that
I remember some
combine?
big drops from this guy.
Yeah, so maybe they're wrong on that. Who knows? PFF is.
I meant mostly off of my memory and just watching Maryland play, and I remember a lot of drops.
As good as PFF is, sometimes they do make mistakes. So maybe they aren't 100% on the 1 drop there. Maybe they thought some drops were not necessarily his fault and didn't count them as drops. But at the end of the day, he's a guy that 6'3", 210, guy that can come in, compete. And, maybe he'll be that guy that this year he'll be the Shavers of this year where he'll get called up late in the year, 1 game and get one catch for 1 touchdown and help us tie our own record there of 13 guys and getting a receiving touchdown in a year, see if they can do that back-to-back. And maybe he's a guy like that. But, yeah, I expect him on the practice squad. But, again, yeah, who knows? Like Scott said, maybe he'll come out and show out in camp and push for to be that 6th guy on the roster there for the receiving.
Who was that Bills cornerback they took? It was the 7th round, Alex something. He went to the
Austin.
Yeah.
Oh, and he picked picked up.
I only bring him up because I kind of hope that a guy like Caden Prather can actually stick around and get the development and be able to get the coaching within the Bills staff and not be picked off the practice squad like Alex Austin was, because it just would be nice to see a guy with his at least ability or his size and frame and at least traits to see what he can do and see if he can develop into anything with the Bills rather than going and having another team kind of get the rewards of any sort of teachings he gets here in Buffalo. So that's my biggest hope with Prather, is that he can stick around. We can have him in Buffalo for a few years and see if he can make any sort of impact on the roster. It's not likely being a 7th round pick, but as you know, we had a couple of 7th round picks turn into pretty darn good wide receivers, a la Stevie Johnson. So we'll see if Prather can take a similar path as Stevie did, and we'll see how this whole draft class kind of winds up here. So if you haven't done so, please like and share. Please go over to YouTube and subscribe to that Built in Buffalo YouTube channel. Please follow Built in Buffalo on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Go ahead and like this on X as well as reposting. And then on YouTube, if you can hit that little bell there to get the notifications when we're live. We're here with Tommy, who had a great giraffe experience. And Tommy, we really appreciate your time. Big fundraiser going out on Saturday there at Wings. So I'm going to put the link to that again in the comments here. If you guys are capable, please consider giving a donation and head over and say hi to Tommy on Saturday as his celebrity tour here around continues. As one of the things I asked him before he came on was if he was sick of talking yet, and he said no. He said he loves it. So, Tommy, really appreciate you being here, buddy, and hope you had fun with us. Anything else on the whole draft class before we get out of here that you kind of want to tell anybody your thoughts and just anything else about the season with the Bills? We talked about the win total for the Bills before you came on, so maybe just mention that if you would, just real quick, as far as your prediction for how many wins the Bills might have this year.
I expect a little bit more of the same as last season. Maybe I think a little bit better than last season, because I think our defense is going to make make a little more of an impact on the games. Obviously, it's going to be potent like it was last year. We could have 12 to 13 guys, different guys getting a touchdown reception. Maybe even Allen does it again. Who knows? But yeah, definitely feel like it's going to be another great season for the Bills. Maybe even a 1 seed in the AFC, maybe.
That would be something,
cool. I'd take that.
Little home field throughout, a little AFC championship
That's
to
what they
close out
need.
Highmark Stadium.
Yeah, that'll be best case scenario for sure.
Yeah, as long as the snow doesn't ruin the party there and cause any games to get pushed. That's the one thing you risk there as you get deep into winter in Buffalo. So definitely love it. Love the enthusiasm, Tommy, and really appreciate you sticking around with us and giving us your opinions on everything and going through the whole show with us. That was really cool to have you. And again, Tommy's fundraiser there for Duchenne muscular dystrophy and helping him make sure he has a nice independent lifestyle moving forward. So really appreciate you, Tommy. We'll see everybody next Thursday. Thank you, and go Bills.
Go Bills.
Yep.
Go Bills.